that I'm just a rock chick.
I would describe my music and my sound as Avril.
It's the best damn thing.
Welcome back to another episode of the Best Damn Avril Lavigne podcast, a facts and trivia-based podcast about Canadian pop singer Avril Lavigne. I'm your host, Andrea DiFrancesco. In this bonus episode, we're going to discuss the latest Avril news, including a new collaboration with her fiancé Matson, as well as her recent nominations for the JUNO Awards, and much more. Here's the major events and highlights that have happened since our last episode. According to Loudwire, Avril is considered the number 21 best-selling rock or metal artist of all time with over 47 million albums sold. They also ranked her number 19 on the list of rock or metal artists with the most top 40 hits, and Love Sucks was number 11 on the highest charting rock or metal albums of 2022. On January 19th, an article was published by The Sun with Brian May of Queen, who said he would like to collaborate with Avril. He said, "I have never really collaborated, but I'd love to work with Paul McCartney and Avril Lavigne. Every time I see her, I think she is very rock and roll, and there are a lot of female artists, but she is the best." On January 21st, Avril did an interview with Most Requested Live with Romeo, where she revealed she is finishing her 8th album and that it will be a mix of her previous albums as well as new sounds. She confirmed there will only be a few tracks similar to Love Sucks. She also teased a collaboration that she's excited about, but did not reveal who it was. On January 22nd, Matson posted a teaser of the track Eyelids from his new album God Save the Teen. In the video, he was painting a portrait of Avril from her photo shoot with 17 magazine in 2007. The same day, a previously unheard electro-pop remix of Warrior leaked online. The remix is believed to be a demo version. On January 24th, Matson posted a teaser for another track on his album called Avril Song and revealed she was in the room when he recorded it. On January 25th, he posted the teaser for their duet called Shelter. A pre-order listing appeared on Urban Outfitters' website for a limited edition vinyl by dance artist ILLENIUM with a track called Eyes Wide Shut featuring Avril on vocals and drums by Travis Barker. This title appeared some months earlier on Avril's ASCAP page. The album was then officially announced by ILLENIUM on January 30th. The album would be released on April 28th. On January 28th, several demo versions of Dumb Blonde leaked, with 7 different bridges. You can find a video comparing each version on YouTube. On January 30th and 31st, Avril posted stories from the studio. The vinyl for the Let Go 20th Anniversary Edition was released on January 31st, including a special red edition from Target. On January 31st, Avril was also announced by the JUNO Awards in 5 categories, including Artist of the Year, Single of the Year for Bite Me, and Pop Album of the Year and Album of the Year for Love Sucks. She was also nominated for the TikTok JUNO Fan Choice Award, which is fan-voted. On February 2nd, Avril posted stories from the studio again. On February 3rd, Matson released his 5th studio album, God Save the Teen, which includes a song dedicated to Avril called Avril Song, and a duet between them called Shelter. On February 4th, they attended the Clive Davis pre-Grammys party in Los Angeles ahead of the 65th Annual Grammy Awards. And for the week of February 6th, Let Go re-entered the Billboard charts, appearing at number 2 on vinyl albums, number 6 on top album sales, and number 81 on the Billboard 200 albums chart. Avril also ranked number 48 on the Billboard Artist 100. So sharing my thoughts on these new songs with Avril from Matson, first starting with Avril's song. So I don't think Avril is actually on the song. If she is at all, I think she's just kind of in the background a little bit, but she at least was in the room when the song was recorded, which I think is really sweet. But it's a song that Matson wrote dedicated to her. And what's interesting about it is that even though it's called Avril's song, she herself is not mentioned by name in the song. And when I listened to the song and I read through the lyrics, I really felt like he wrote it in a way that like almost anybody could relate to it. And that was how I felt when I listened to it, is that I think, as I mentioned before, that I am engaged myself. And so I showed the song to my fiance, and I think both of us kind of really related to the lyrics and that kind of feeling like you're in a relationship with somebody who is really, really good, but you feel like you're not worthy of them. And I think that most people can relate to that. Like anybody who's ever been in a very serious relationship, even if it's a good relationship, I think that we've all kind of been there. We've all felt like that at points. So I quite liked Avril's song, like enough to add it to my music library and kind of go back to it every so often. And then the other song that they actually did do together was Shelter, and Avril actually does have a writing credit on it as well. Matson had mentioned this a while ago, that they had like sort of an emo song on his new album together. And I think everybody was really curious to hear what the follow-up was going to be like after they did Flames together, because that was kind of like one of his bigger songs and they performed it a lot together and it became like this really big hit for him. And that was such a big like pop punk kind of banger breakup song. And so I think everybody was really curious to see what they were going to do next. And I think we were all kind of surprised by Shelter, like what Shelter ended up being. I mean, even though he described it as an emo song, but I think we weren't exactly expecting it to be what it is, but kind of in a good way. Like, at least for me, I think the reviews on it were kind of mixed. Like some people really liked it. Some people thought that Flames is better. At first, I kind of almost agreed. Like I thought, Shelter, it's not quite as obviously like radio friendly, but I don't think it's meant to be. And again, I found the lyrics to be really, really relatable because I myself am in that kind of relationship where it's talking about that person that you feel like they are your protection from everything. And so again, I showed it to my fiance and we both really liked the song. And for me, I feel like it was a grower. Like the more that I listened to it, the more that it grew on me. And like maybe at first I was kind of like, yeah, it's okay. Like I don't know how much I'll go back to it, but I kept listening to it over and over. And I also think that Avril sounds really good on the song too. Like the only thing I don't like about Avril's part is that she does this kind of weird accent. Like I don't know if it's just her Canadian accent or she's like over exaggerating it or something, but that's the only thing that kind of takes me out of it a little bit. And I think that was a common comment from a lot of fans, but otherwise I think she sounds really good on the song, and I really like the lyrics of the song, and I really like the meaning of it, because a lot of people I think were hoping for sort of almost like a Flames part 2, and to me that just wouldn't have made any sense because Flames was a breakup song, and so obviously the fact that they're engaged, it made sense to kind of do like more of a love song together, and I really like that instead of just going for doing like another song very similar to Flames, that they went for a completely different type of song. I think that just made a lot more sense. And I like the sentiment of it. And I think it just overall makes a lot more sense. I think it's the kind of song that gets better with more listens and you can't get it out of your head. And I really feel like this is going to be a great one to sing in concert, like whether or not Avril is there to actually do it in person with him. Because I know that he's going on tour pretty soon. So it's kind of like we don't really know if Avril is going to go with him or not. Maybe she'll appear like here and there as a surprise guest. But if they do end up singing it together or not, I think that it's going to be phenomenal in concert. Like it's one of those songs I can imagine people holding up like not lighters anymore, but like the lights on their cell phones or something, like people waving their cell phones back and forth or something as you sing that chorus. Like it's such a sing along chorus and like the type of chorus that feels really good to sing in a crowd. And so I can just imagine this one being so like powerful live. So a couple little interesting facts about Shelter. Like I said, it is co-written with Avril as well as with John Feldman, who also produced it. But Modson did do an interview recently with Zach Sang, where he said that initially he wanted the Goo Goo Dolls to be on the song because he's a really big Goo Goo Dolls fan, and he also did cover Iris on the album as well. And so apparently he wanted the Goo Goo Dolls to be on the song, but it was like going to happen and then something fell through about it, and he was really like upset about it. And that was when Avril got the idea, like maybe this is the universe telling me that I should be on the song with you. And so that's kind of how that all happened, which is really interesting to think that she almost wasn't on the song, because maybe they felt like we've already done a song together and like we're engaged. Like, would that be weird for us to like keep doing songs together and stuff? But it is kind of interesting that if not for that, she wouldn't have been on it. I actually kind of like the idea that Avril is on the song. Like, I'm trying to think of the Goo Goo Dolls being on it, and while I can sort of, the song is kind of written almost in like the style of Johnny Resnick, I can kind of see why that, why he would think I want the Goo Goo Dolls to be on this song. But I'm just trying to think of how they would be on it. And I really just think it flows so much better with Avril being on it, because it's like literally about her and it's about their relationship. And so I think that it just flows a lot better. And I think it just it really like encapsulates the meaning of the song when the person that it's about is also on the song. So I'm actually really glad it turned out the way it did. And then I also wanted to share, like, kind of on a more personal note, like a different interpretation that I had of Shelter, just because, I think it's always interesting when artists write songs about a particular thing and they write it for a particular reason, but sometimes they write it in such a way that it can be totally open to interpretation and people can interpret it very differently from how the artist originally meant it. And that's like the beauty of music, I think. But even though I know that Modson wrote this song about his relationship with Avril and how he feels like she is sort of his protection from everything and like the person that he can go to when he's feeling down and that sort of thing. And I absolutely relate to that, like 100%. That's how I feel about my fiance, how my fiance feels about me. I totally respect that that's what he wrote it about. And I absolutely identify with that. But the more that I read through the lyrics, the more that it started to take on an actually even deeper meaning for me than even that. And I feel like that is the reason why the song really became super meaningful and important for me, and why I kept listening to it a lot, and why I actually ended up liking it more than Flames, or kind of like how it changed my perception of the song from being like, yeah, it's okay, to I actually really love this song and I can't stop listening to it. I can't stop singing it. So I'm a devout Catholic, and my faith is something that's really, really important to me. It's at the center of my life, as it is for a lot of people who are Christians. And so I think anybody out there who is Christian, if you really read through those lyrics, you can absolutely connect those lyrics to the relationship that we have to Jesus Christ or to God, where it's like, you know, Jesus Christ is the person that we go to when we're feeling at our lowest of lows and like we're feeling like the world is against us, and Jesus Christ is the person that is our shelter from everything. And like, no matter what, no matter how many people might be against us or hate us, Jesus is always the person that will let us in and be our shelter and be our protector, be our vindicator from everything. And so I just thought that that interpretation gave the song such deeper meaning, maybe than even Maud really meant it. And I know that Maud is like somewhat religious. And so maybe that was, you know, whether that was like an intentional thing on his part or not, I don't know. But I would like to think that he would think that that's really cool that somebody could interpret it in that way. So I totally respect that there are people who aren't going to agree or people who aren't religious who don't see the song that way. That's totally fine. But I just thought I would kind of throw that out there and share that with, you know, those of us who do have a religion or who do have that faith that's like the center of our lives and who do have like, you know, Jesus or God as the center of our lives, and how these lyrics can actually really connect to us in that way. So for me, that was really what made me just absolutely fall in love with the song, is like, you know, thinking about those lyrics and thinking about like when I'm down, when I'm at my lowest of lows and I feel like the world is against me, you know, Jesus is the one who is my shelter from everything. So now steering into something completely different with the pop remix of Warrior that leaked. I think some people weren't sure if it was like an actual version of the song or if it was just like a fan-made thing, but I think it's definitely authentic because there's some vocal ad-libs and stuff in there that, you know, we didn't hear in the original song. There's like no way that somebody could have created that. I don't have a lot to say about the pop remix of Warrior. I think I listened to it like once, and I actually burst out laughing like the moment that I heard it start with like those dramatic oh, whoa, whoa things in the beginning. I just thought it was so like over the top, and I get why they did that, because the version that ended up being on the album was a lot more kind of understated and subtle and stripped back, and maybe could have used a little bit more oomph just to kind of make it a little more dramatic maybe. But I just think this was like way over the top. And I don't know if maybe they were considering it to be a single at some point. They thought like, let's try to make it a little bit more like radio friendly maybe. But I just think, yeah, it really didn't fit the album. And I'm glad that that's not the version they ended up going with. Like, even though I think some people were like, you know, they think that the version that ended up on the album was a little bit too understated. I would rather it be a little too simple than be like way over the top. Like, yeah, I guess it would have like ended the album with a bang maybe, but I just thought it was too electronic sounding and the production just really didn't fit the rest of the album. Yeah, I'm just really glad that they didn't go with this version. And then also, speaking of Head Above Water outtakes, there were also a bunch of alternate versions of Dumb Blonde that leaked. And there's a video that you can find on YouTube that's like comparing all the different like variations of the bridge. It's basically just different versions of the bridge. Again, I think I listened through like one time, and I think what they ended up going with between the Nicki Minaj version and then like the solo version that ended up on the album, I think those were the best of the bunch. It's really interesting that there were so many different versions of the bridge for that one song. Like, I don't think we've ever heard so many different alternate versions for one song before. It seems like they just really didn't know what to do with the bridge, especially lyrically. I also am really curious to know why there's so many leaks from Head Above Water, like between some of the things that leaked last year, like Lights Out and Lucky Ones, and then this year with the Warrior remix and Dumb Blonde. Like, I'm kind of curious to know why all these things are leaking from the Head Above Water session specifically. It's just kind of bizarre. And then also, like I mentioned in the beginning, there was a quote from Brian May of the band Queen where he said that he would like to collaborate with Avril. At first, I actually thought that was like a fake, like made up quote, because I know The Sun isn't necessarily the most reliable newspaper. And so I thought like maybe somebody made it up or something, because it just like does not sound like something he would say. But apparently he did. So I think it's really cool that he named her as a person that he would like to collaborate with, because he mentioned her and Paul McCartney in the same sentence. So that's pretty wild that he would mention like the two of them in the same sentence together. I think it's also interesting that he mentioned like there's a lot of female artists that are really cool, but like I think Avril is the best, and like she's so like rock and roll and everything. So to get the stamp of approval from, you know, one of the members of Queen pretty much like seals the deal that, you know, you're a rock star. So I think absolutely, I think all of Avril's fans would be up for a collab with Brian May, like in whatever capacity that would be. Like maybe he would just play guitar or something on a song of hers, but I think that would be super cool if they did that, and would be super legendary, super iconic. And I think that like not just Avril's fans, but like I think the entire like general public would get a kick out of seeing a collab between them. And I think that it would do such wonders for Avril too, with like her credibility in the rock scene. I think it would just kind of cement her place there if that were to happen. Then we also have to talk about this thing called Eyes Wide Shut. So there was a song, like people noticed quite some time ago that on Avril's ASCAP like song registration page where a lot of her songs get registered, that there was a title called Eyes Wide Shut. And a lot of people were wondering, is this for the new album that she's working on, or, you know, what is this for? And so now we know it is for an upcoming album by a dance artist called ILLENIUM. And apparently it's going to feature Travis Barker as well. And so I have to confess, I don't really know anything about ILLENIUM. I know that he recently just did an Anti-Hero remix for Taylor Swift, but beyond that, I really don't know anything about him. So I know he's a dance artist. So how this is going to work with Avril is going to be really interesting. I mean, Avril has done stuff like this before. Like a lot of people compared it to when she collaborated with Gray on the song Wings Clipped. So a lot of people think it could end up being something like that. We'll just kind of have to see. The album is not coming out until April 28th, so we're going to have to wait a little while to finally see the result. But any new music from Avril is always good, especially as we're waiting for her to finish up the 8th album. So I'm just really curious and intrigued to see what comes out of this. And I also think the title is really interesting as well, and curious to see what it's about. And then next we have to talk about the JUNO nominations, which is huge. So the JUNOs are basically like the Canadian equivalent of the Grammys. So a few highlights. So she's, like I said, she's nominated for 5 awards, including some big ones, including Artist of the Year, Album of the Year, things like that. But some highlights that I noticed, like I kind of went back through her history with the JUNOs to see kind of what's her past history like with the award show, like which of these awards has she won before, how long has it been since she's been nominated, stuff like that. So this is her first time being nominated for Album of the Year since Goodbye Lullaby, which is huge. Like the first time in basically a decade to be nominated for a huge major award like that. Like the fact that 20 years into her career, she's still getting nominated for major awards like this is definitely something to be proud of. Like, you know, whether she wins or not, just to be nominated and to be considered like this far into her career is still like an accomplishment. I think she has the best chance for maybe pop album and the fan choice because that one's fan voted. And she's actually won that one a couple of times before. And so that's the one that she's historically actually won the most. And I think that her biggest competition is probably The Weeknd, who is nominated in, like, I think almost all the same categories as her. What's interesting is that when I looked at the other nominees in the same categories, there weren't a lot of names that I recognized, to be honest with you. Like a lot of artists I didn't recognize or albums or songs. I'm like, I haven't heard of these. But I mean, that's just because I'm not mega familiar with like the Canadian music side of things. So I'm hoping that means that her chances are good. But, you know, we never know how these award shows are going to pan out. But like I said, just the fact that she's even nominated, she's being considered. There's some awards in here that she's being considered for that she has not been nominated for in quite some time, or that she, you know, either has never won or hasn't won in a long time. So I'm, you know, obviously fingers crossed that she'll win something. Like I said, I think her best chances might be in pop album. Like album of the year might be a little too much to hope for, but like even artist of the year, but like at least pop album. And I definitely think the fan choice, I think she'll have a really good shot at that. So I just hope that she at least wins something. That would be really, really nice. A really nice way to cap off the Love Sucks era, I think. And then my thoughts on what we know so far about the 8th album, which isn't much, admittedly, but she has talked a little bit about it in a couple of different interviews. She's mentioned that she's been working it. Like, we know she's been in studio a lot, and she said that she's really close to finishing it. And so far, we don't know a lot about the sound, but she said that she is experimenting with like a combination of her old sounds and some new sounds. And she's working with mostly the same team as Love Sucks, but adding some, you know, new collaborators in there, like as we've seen. And like we've seen even like Gail be in the studio with her recently. So, I mean, we don't have a lot to go off of based on that, but I know some people were hoping for a Love Sucks Part 2, but I'm honestly glad that that doesn't seem to be like the direction that she's going in. And why would we need 2 albums in a row that sound similar, especially when Love Sucks was like a big breakup album and it's like now she's engaged, so it just wouldn't make any sense. I am definitely hoping that there's like maybe some more mid-tempos and like maybe some more ballad-like songs, because I think Love Sucks, you know, apart from the one ballad that was on that album, like ballads are something that Avril has always done really, really well. And I think that was sorely missing from Love Sucks. Like obviously Love Sucks, I think, worked without the ballads because that wasn't what that album was intended to be. But I wouldn't want to see another album just like that, you know, another album full of mostly up-tempo songs. It would just feel very repetitive. So I would like to see a lot more like mid-tempos and ballads included on the next album, and maybe some songs like with a little bit deeper meaning, or like love songs or something that like more accurately represents where she's at currently. Like, you know, we had just had a whole breakup album, so it wouldn't make sense to do another album just like that. I think some people were a little worried, a little concerned when she said like she's experimenting with new sounds and like beats and stuff. I think some people were a little bit concerned that it was going to be kind of like the self-titled album, where it's like this kind of electronic, like weird electronic hybrid with the pop rock thing, and that it wasn't going to really work. But I think when she says beats, I think she means kind of like Love It When You Hate Me or Mercury in Retrograde type of beats, like mixed with a pop punk thing. So we'll kind of just have to see. But I'm optimistic about the album so far. Like, I was just mainly worried, like, are we going to just get a Love Sucks Part 2? Because I kind of really don't want that. And so, thankfully, it doesn't seem to be going in that direction. Like, thankfully for me. I know that, like, some fans might be kind of disappointed. But as far as I'm concerned, like, I'm happy about the direction she's going in. I'm just hoping that we're going to get to hear something soon, because she keeps saying, like, she's almost done with it. So, hopefully in the next, like, few months, maybe we'll hear a little bit more about it. And the last thing that I wanted to address is like that it's been quite a while since I've done an episode, and I was kind of thinking like, maybe I'll do this bonus episode to talk about her new duet with Mod-sun, because I think that's like a big thing to talk about, and talk about the JUNOs and all that. So I wanted to get this bonus episode in here, but I am working on another episode and I have the idea for it. It's going to require a lot of research, which is why it's taking a really long time. So I don't want anybody to think that I like forgot about the podcast. Like, I love doing the podcast, but it just takes a really long time to put together episodes. And that is largely in part because it takes a lot of research sometimes, depending on the topic. So I have a big topic that I'm doing for the next episode, and I really hope that people are going to find it interesting. It's just that it's going to require a lot of research that I'm still currently working on. So rest assured that at some point in the next few weeks that I will have that up. I'm trying to, get through the research and then record the episode and then edit it and upload it and all of that as soon as I possibly can, but it might be a few weeks, but just rest assured I am working on it, and I really hope that the end result will be worth it, because this is a really big topic that I'm working on, and I just, like I said, I hope that people find it interesting at least. But for now, we conclude this bonus edition of the Best Damn Avril Lavigne podcast. Be sure to subscribe on your preferred podcast platform so you can get new episodes directly in your feed, and please take a minute to leave a rating or review because it helps more fans find the show. We're currently streaming on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google, Amazon Music, and Audible, and you can also find me on Instagram at BestDamnAvrilPod to keep up with the latest podcast news. Join me again next time on the Best Damn Avril Lavigne podcast. The Best Damn Avril Lavigne podcast is hosted, produced, and edited by Andre DiFrancesco. Theme music is HD and Lights by J. Powell Flicks. Follow the latest podcast news on Instagram at BestDamnAvrilPod or email bestdamnavrilpod@yahoo.com.